We're here with WTF. What's the future? And we got our key host, QuHarrison Terry, and producing partner, Mike O'Day, speaking.
Yo, what's up? What's up? How y'all living?
Q,
Man.
awesome to be here. Episode 1 of our Everydays.
Yeah, no, this is every day. It's gonna be fun. It's a journal that I started not too long ago, almost a year ago. And I just every day wake up and ask myself, what's the future? I document it in a journal. And what I'm trying to do best right now is share that journal with people in real time because I think that we live in a period where building in public is possible, but it does require some assistance. So I'm happy to be here with you, Mike. And I really do appreciate the effort and time that you've put into helping me produce this show because I think that this will reach a lot of people and there's a lot of value to be had from being in the room or being around future thinkers as they think about some of these emerging technologies and concepts that are changing our lives.
Totally. And I mean, you touched upon it, but the power of these broad topics and just the insights is going to be really, really interesting and profound, both for us to explore and then the audience to tap into. But even just the nature of building in public, right? It's us figuring out how do we want to communicate this? How do we best serve the audience that's tuned in? And what resonates? How do we package something up so that it's most useful? And then how do we polish it and produce it in a way that we're proud of, right? So there's all that thought. And we had this conversation the other day, and although a lot of this conversation is going to be around the future of hard tech and innovation, it's very much creativity is in that wheelhouse, and showing a little bit more of the raw behind the scenes, which is the nature of an everyday building in public. We're going to see a lot of the raw creative inputs, and I'm
For
excited
sure.
about that.
And you need to go through that creative process. I think as an author, one thing that we don't share a lot of is what it takes to write a book. But
Mhm.
anybody that's ever written a published book or written a book that they haven't published, they know that it's not you just sitting down at a keyboard and saying, I'm going to jam 50,000 words. Now, for some people, that is their creative process. And don't get me wrong, that's a really impressive process. But for most, what ends up happening is there's this point where you're actually saying, I have this thought. You jot that thought down. And then you have another thought and you jot that thought down. And then you take it to your outline. And then you construct kind of this narrative or this thesis that eventually becomes a story. And that works whether it be fiction or nonfiction. It's one of those things where I really want to do that in real time. And that's what every days in WTF is. So if it's jarring to the people, it doesn't mean it means what's the future. So let's go ahead and get into it.
Reinventing the words.
Haha, you got to
And
give it meaning, man. You got to give it meaning. Yeah.
totally. And I mean, you touched on this again in your last thought, but like bringing all this thoughts to life, that one of our early things is showing the power of daily notes, and that's kind of
Yes.
becomes the backbone of this whole entire show concept, is us consuming and then actually like taking notes, which is a version of creation. That's like the first form of creation, note taking.
Right, right. Yeah. No, I mean, that's the that's the beautiful thing about it. So I think today I talked to you a bit about it. We're going to talk about LLMs or large language models. And anyone that's been following every days up until this point already knows a ton about large language models. It's just they might not know too much about what's happening because a lot's changed in the last I think the last time I wrote about this on Everydays was like May. And since then, Bard has had some pretty interesting updates and it's went pretty far. You've got Anthropic, they've introduced this thing called Claude 2, which it's a little bit better than GPT 3.5 or ChatGPT, the free version. It's not exactly on par with GPT 4, but if you've ever went to like ChatGPT and you've tried to put a lot of data in the prompt, you'll notice that like it'll time out or it'll say too many characters or it won't work. And Claude 2 gets around that because it just allows for a lot more input to be had and interpreted. And then last but not least, Meta has definitely gotten in the game and they've got Llama 2 and Man, that's been the one that everybody is just having so much fun with right now, given that it can be used for like commercial purposes and it's quite good. So the landscape has changed. And for anyone that's wondering what is a large language model, we've got notes on that. Go head over to everydays.wtf. I've covered that pretty in depth. One of the things that I'm thinking about writing a book on is this whole subject of generative AI. And you can't write a book on generative AI without really understanding or being able to talk to large language models and where they stand. The reason why I haven't sat down and just gotten in book writing mode is because this thing is not changing in a matter of years, but not even in a matter of months. But it really does feel like there's a very monumental upgrade in the whole landscape of LLMs almost every other week. And there's tons of tools out there, tons of great people trying to solve very challenging problems on all sides and spectrums, whether it be usability, understanding what's going on on the black box front, understanding what you can do with the size of an LLM. So if you've got a 4 GB LLM compared to a 100 TB LLM, like is the 4 GB one that's more lean and efficient and can be ran on like your home computer a better product or close enough to the one that you would run it on a cloud computer or a server. And so I'm given like a landscape because I haven't talked about this stuff publicly for a while. But Mike, what quick questions do you have as it stands to like the LLM landscape?
Yeah, so I popped in with a bit of a meta question here that's specific to LLMs, but even broader to WTFs. So you said the landscape's changing so fast, which makes writing a book hard, makes learning it challenging in itself. So what's your
Yes.
thought process of when something, a technology, a space, an area is changing very, very rapidly? How do you go about even like learning the base level and then kind of staying up to date week to week or day to day to stick with the news?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. And the way I think about it is technology at its core isn't that different, right? So learning to ride a bike is pretty challenging in the beginning. But once you understand all the things that go into riding a bike, reading the road, understand the intersections, understanding stop signs and stoplights, a lot of that transfers over pretty well into driving a car or driving an ATV or whatever motor vehicle that you have. The thing that changes is speed. And the thing that changes here when we go back to technology and the LLMs is it is very much the speed. When it comes to understanding like data sets and AI in the past, you had to know Python. And I think that that was the craziest part because a lot of people they just, they don't go to study computer science or have fun picking up new programming languages. And Python was relatively a simple, and not, I'm saying was, it still is. It's still a relatively simple computer language because the syntax is pretty clean. Syntax meaning the programming language and the interface associated with it. So what you're actually typing to get the output from the computer. With the large language models, the syntax changed. You can use a Python interface. Heck, you could use whatever you really want. Like the coding interface is it is what it is. The way you interface with the large language model though is using the English word. So it's kind of funny because the way you get better at interacting with the large language model today is not through necessarily prompt engineering. It's through just really understanding how to write and how to express yourself and your desires like through written communication. And if not written communication, now we have interfaces too where you can just speak to an LLM and get your desired outputs. But the way that you get really good at using LLMs is by using them. But the way that you really figure out what works within an LLM environment is by simply learning how to communicate more efficiently and effectively. And it's a catch 22 because most developers got into development because they probably didn't want to do creative tasks like writing or like talk to people too, right? Like a lot of it is just you do your work on your own. And now you have like some of the best programmers today when it comes to this section of computing, being people that are just really good at being persuasive or getting people to do what they want using the written English language. And I'll give you an example here. Uh, we've seen a lot of security functionalities been enabled in the Google landscape and the OpenAI landscape, and it's in any other LLM that's publicly available. You're basically trying to protect your large language model from bad actors. Well, the way these bad actors are getting around some of these solutions and methods of protecting the model is just by simply writing simple language and saying, "Hey, okay, you want to learn how to do this nefarious activity." It says, "I'm sorry, I can't do that for you." As the bad actor, I think of a smoother way to say it. I might change a phrasing. I might add a comma here. I might break it out a bit, and then I get the language model to do what I want it to do. And they're calling that a jailbreak, kind of like the iOS early iOS days when you could like get around iOS on the iPhone and the iPod Touch as well, and you could get the Apple devices to do what you really wanted, or even Teslas nowadays, where if you jailbreak a Tesla, you could do some interesting things with it. So instead of having a really in-depth knowledge of code, if you're pretty good with the written word, you could be a pretty badass LLM engineer.
No, that's really insightful and profound. I mean, sometimes the simplest things are the most profound, right? The English language in this case is the superpower. Early in this specific episode, even you were talking about kind of latest news updates and some new innovations that were happening. How are you keeping up to date on those kind of like new things that are popping up when it comes to LLMs? Not broadly speaking, like I'm saying, very specific. Like, hey, this
Yeah.
company launched this. This company launched
So
this. There's this new product
I
that's coming to market.
I wish there was a tool or something. I mean, I just follow all the people that are in it. Recently, I made an album. It was called 34 AI. It's actually on everydays.wtf. Yeah, you can find it if you go to everydays.wtf. It's recent. And in that album, I actually highlighted 34 innovators that I found interesting in the artificial intelligence space. More specifically, probably like a lot of this, when I say AI, I'm speaking to generative AI. So LLMs do apply here. And all those people, I follow them on Twitter, I have their Google alerts turned on. I watch what their companies are doing, and I try to use the tools. Like I said, with the riding the bike, it's like once you start using this stuff, you don't lose the skills. You just have to continuously do it. Am I
Yeah.
spending 5 hours a day on ChatGPT? Hell no. Am I writing, a prompt for ChatGPT several times a day? Yeah. And am I relying on it to do my work, or do I think this tool is going to make me a ton of money? I'm not in that camp. I think I'm more so in the camp of understanding what the tool is capable of, what are some of the downsides, and where is this going? Like, I mean, going back to the whole concept of what's the future, it's like right now, there's a big issue with these models and their ability to drift. So, drifting is this whole concept of the longer the model kind of exists, the worse the hallucinations and the data that it gives you gets. And Stanford recently did, or there's some researchers at Stanford that recently did a paper on it, and they had some pretty conclusive findings. And it doesn't matter if you are a kid in your bedroom with a really large GPU, or a head of research at a pretty prestigious research institution. You're still dealing with drift. You're still dealing with hallucinations. You're still dealing with the whole concept of these things can be manipulated in ways that you can't really foresee, because it's all based on like the its interpretation of the human language. So, like, all of these things apply, all of these things add value and give us insight into where we might go with this. And I think that is what ultimately keeps me really excited about the WTF component of this.
Totally. And I mean, goes to a lot of the ethos even of why we're leaning in and building this, right? All this information is not fully aggregated anywhere. And it's something like all these different topics that are the future and it's so interconnected. once you're in the conversation, you start to be like, oh, this person's insightful, that this person's like really interesting. Here's a new thing that comes up, right? So it's not just information sharing, it's building a community of people that are in the know. And that's really, really profound.
Yeah, 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 100%. Like it's one of those things where every day is not WTF. I really do stress that like we should start sharing our information. Like we lived in an era where protecting information was valuable, and I still think to some extent that's true. Like you definitely want to protect your IP and and the things that are going to make you money and, and have value to your company or your person. But we're not going to get through this era if we hold all the insights and we share hold and we hold on to all the jewels. We're going to have to actually have face-to-face conversations with people and say, hey, I use this LLM or I use ChatGPT and I got XYZ. And I would also caution people that go out there and say, I'm a chat GPT expert or I know everything or I can like make sure you have the most secure version of chat GPT that ever exists or LLMs that ever exist because it just simply isn't true. Right now, like this stuff has been around for, I mean, GPT-1 came out in 2018 and GPT-3 came out in 2020. It was available to many, but it was in like OpenAI's playgrounds, which is like their developer docs. ChatGPT comes out November 30th, 2022, and that basically gives it a web chat box interface, and everything goes wild. Like that's the start of where we are today. And the funny thing about that is it hasn't even been a year yet. So it's very hard to not even be a year into something and be a master at it. And even the masters themselves are asking very, very strong and heavy questions around regulation and around, you know, what if some of these things get access to tools that we can't control what they do or the output is, or why don't we understand what's in what the training how the training data correlates to its performance on output. Like there's some very heavy questions that I think like your end user probably doesn't care about as much, but it's not about how the tool performs today, it's about where that roadmap can take you tomorrow.
Yeah, and I mean, hearing all this, I'm super excited about it. And one thing I'm very confident in, there's a lot of unknowns, but I'm confident on WTF, we'll be talking about large language models way
Yeah.
more than just on today's episode.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like, yeah. I mean, like, I take notes on this stuff regularly, and we're gonna put a note up today around large language models, featuring some papers and YouTube talks and just things that I've found interesting in the last few months or here recently. And I think if you're in any industry, this is one of the few tools where it's going to have an impact. I mean, Lupe Fiasco just wrote a rap song with an LLM. Like, I mean, you have one of the rap game's most prolific lyricists of contemporary times writing with a computer. Like, I mean, I don't think Lupe is going to be the big artist that's going to figure this all out, but he's definitely on the right path. And I think that, there's going to be some young kids that are incentivized to really create. And, it's going to affect everything from the creative side of things to obviously the science side of things when you look at healthcare and some of the transformative properties that it can have on just research and development there. And then ultimately, like even our day to day lives. I mean, like if you're not utilizing chat to be a better communicator today, you're already behind because that is very easy to do. There's tools that have all been basically plugged into somebody's LLM and they're helping you be a better version of yourself. And these are tools that you already use. Grammarly has a really great AI component to it. Superhuman from the email side of things has a really good AI beta program that they've got plugged into right now. Zoom, scary, but it's doing its thing over there on the AI front. You've also got Loom, which is a very cool tool in the sense that it allows you to just do asynchronous meetings by recording your screen and sharing your thoughts. And now it can summarize what you talk about in the updates that you share with your team or loved ones or whomever. And I think that AI is enabling us to get some of our time back. And it's also enabling us to level set on the communication side. So if I were really concerned about these things and you were like, okay, well, this is going to like just be the end all for just everything, you got to look at where that's not going to be true. That's definitely not going to be true in anything that relies on you being the best communicator that you can be. And I think communication is at the root of just about everything in this country and elsewhere. So I would say take a look at it. I don't know. Maybe if you're in a rough part in your relationship, maybe you can even consult with an LLM and get right there too.
That is good. That is good advice. That's the type of advice why people tune into WTF.
For sure, for sure. I mean, uh, yeah, no, I love it.
Q. So, I mean, like I said, we're going to be talking about LLMs so much more, and that was a really like pretty good in-depth look into like some of the overviews of what's happening since you last covered it. I can't help but like just keep putting this ticker up. Like this is me having fun.
I
And,
love
and
it.
we're going to be sharing all the notes behind these thoughts. So if someone wants to dive in and look at the source material, everydays.wtf, daily notes, different topics, which is fun. So today's focus was LLMs, but what are some other topics that are on your mind? Kind of just glimpses of other stuff that we're going to be covering in future episodes, future shows, hot topic of the moment.
All right. Well, I mean, yeah. So one of the things that I'm super intrigued by right now as it relates to just information sharing and communicating is like I created everydays.wtf to be like this open journal that I could share publicly with people that care. Then we realized that discoverability was a thing that was necessary to be had. So sharing the notes themselves would defeat the whole purpose of building a unique closed community. So then I was like, okay, how do we really think about creating some type of discoverability for said platform? And if we go back to 2020, virtual everything was virtual, everything. So there were some things about that era that were really good and some things that were really just overkill. Obviously we're all returning back to in-person interactions. I mean, concerts that are all-time high. Look at what's happening with Taylor Swift and Beyonce and those tours. Like it's like even Drake is on tour, and like every day I feel like there's a new Taylor Swift, Beyonce, or Drake story. And what that reminds me of is like, hey, people want to go back outside. They want to be connected. They want to share in real time events with people. And I think that entertainment is here. But that doesn't mean some of the things that we have seen in the past are just gonna just go to the wayside. And so you're starting to see things like Google. I saw last week they're offering their workers to come back to work by treating their offices like destinations. So they've put like a campus hotel on the office, and they said like, hey, you can stay here for $99 a night. Everything's taken care of. We've got the one of the world's best gyms. We got some of the world's best chefs. You can wake up early. You can stay. You can sleep a little bit. You can wait 10 minutes. You can roll into your meeting, and like all on campus. Little
Did you
weird.
see any responses from employees? What was the sentiment? Were they excited about it? Indifferent?
So I saw that it was all over the place, right? Like I think some employees were like, if it was around $60 a night, I'd be fine with it because it's kind of like a alternative to live in apartments that are fully furnished and all that. And then some people said that like, at 99 it's just not worth it, which sounds kind of wild because you work at Google, so I'm guessing you're not at the lower end of the earning potential there. So I mean, like, but and I mean, hey, you never know what a person has going on, and Google basically said straight up you can't expense this. So good luck trying to say, hey, I'm on vacation doing a work trip. They're like, no, you got to use your personal credit card for this. So if I worked at Google and I were looking at it at my current space, I'd probably do it, and I'd try to go see, I would continue to do that whole like work remote hybrid thing where you go hop around and you want to live in California a couple days, then go to New York for a week, then go to like, their office in whatever city, Seattle, whatever. Fine. I think it's a cool way to like basically capitalize on that nomadic desire. I don't think it's going to work for the family of four that has moved away from San Francisco because of cost or because of quality of life. And so I think that This is not going to be an end all be all solution to the problem, but it is a very interesting solution to some of the crises that we have just in the country right now, whether it be on the housing front or it be on the retail space front, like commercial real like I mean commercial real estate right now is it has some pretty big issues, right? There's a lot of people that are not returning to the office. Thus, you have these empty office spaces that are just sitting there. Like you've got, you've got all the accoutrements and things that would go into these spaces. They still have all their amenities. They just don't have people occupying them. And at some point, these corporations are going to wake up and say, "Hey, we're just going to drop this," and that's going to have some true calamities in the real estate market as it sits. So I think that
And
that
that's a future episode. What's the future of corporate real estate? I mean,
yeah,
there's a lot of both innovation that can happen and short-term problem solving that needs to take place, and some hardships for some that have banked their life on it.
no, for sure. I mean, like you're gonna need to do that. But again, if we go back to 2020, I mean, Amazon was early on this, right? When everybody left their office and the homeless population was just like thriving in Seattle. What they said was like, "Hey, we're gonna take our Seattle HQ and we're gonna take this and transform it into a homeless shelter." And they did that. And I'm not in Seattle and I haven't been to it, but I've heard decent things about it. And I mean, obviously, Amazon can't solve the whole problem of homelessness in the entire United States, but the same thing just happened in New York like last week regarding what was it the immigrants? Are you familiar with that, Mike?
Yeah, the migrants from
Yeah,
I think they're from somewhere in South America or Central
yeah.
America.
So they transformed the hotel into like a homeless shelter, and they ran out of rooms, and so people were just sleeping on cardboard boxes in the streets. It was horrible. So you're right. Like this is the what's the future? Like it's not just these emerging technology concepts that like I'm fascinated by. I really am fascinated by kind of all things future, and it's kind of weird because in today's society, like being a future thinker is not something that is fully understood yet, but it's kind of a necessary evil if we want to get through some of these interesting times ahead of us.
And I think that is an awesome, awesome first episode. And just like I could listen to you talk for hours, but I think part of the glory of this and fun of this is keeping it short and tight and continuous, and maybe leave the people wanting a little bit more.
For sure, for sure. Hey, check out everydays.wtf. Mike and I are gonna start getting this to the
Got
best
the
state.
double here, the banner and the ticker.
Uh, I love it. You're having all the fun with these tools, man. And we're gonna get to a point where I think I didn't finish that thought, but like this is a part of the everyday's experience. Like we were doing a lot of virtual events. A lot of that stuff just stopped. I mean, you look at Hopin, they had some struggles last year, and then they just sold off their what was it like? I think like last week. Yeah, last week they sold Hopin, the virtual events conference software. They sold off like their events and their engagement units to Ring Central. So they're only focusing on some of their technology that they have, like StreamYard, Streamable, and then they've got something for like community building called Superwave. So they basically said, "Hey, we want to be a startup again, and we want to focus on these tools that allow people to talk and go live." And I saw that and I was like, Mike, what if we were to like just lean in on just the whole talking element? And then if people want like the links, they want the thoughts, they want to see what's going on, we'll put the show notes on the site. And those can be, straight out of my everyday's journal. Cause like literally that's what I'm doing. Like I'm literally in my journal right now. Like, and I take these notes pretty religiously. Mike has access. He knows like it's pretty hardcore. Right. And he's just like, "Hey, let's do a show." But like we're streaming that stream of consciousness to you so you can index against that. And then for the things that catch your mind or the things that give you that spark, I have that documented in a way where you can go and learn more. And I think that that's what we need right now is to leverage our own unique perspectives and experiences as like niche curators as a like it's like go to Google for the general, go to Mike for like the specific, like go to Mike for the specific elements of the things that he knows about, go to Q for the specific things that he knows about. And like it's not that you're boxing people in, it's just that like that's when you can do your best work. That's when you can thrive. And so like the
Yeah,
things that,
and the individual can evolve, right? And what someone super knowledgeable about 2 years ago, they become knowledgeable about other things 2 years later and 5 years later,
and we see
and
that all the time on social media.
totally. And
Yeah.
I think this show format and the notes companion will be successful because of the value that's provided. But at its pinnacle, what this could actually be is a playbook for others to kind of tap into their specific expertise and like build a community around it of how do you share your notes on an ongoing basis and a little bit of raw material in the creative process and work to create value for others as you yourself are learning and growing. And everyone is a teacher, everyone's a student. And some people are just a little bit ahead of others when it comes to specific areas. And that's what this becomes a playbook for.
For sure. And I mean, it's not easy, but I mean, we make it, we're putting together the playbook so that somebody else can do it in a much easier fashion than we. So pay, pay attention. Every day is not WTF. I'm really excited to do this with Mike and others. And if you have thoughts, suggestions, or you want to know what the future is on a topic, well, I might not be an expert, but I'd love to just get the challenge and just see and do the research. So let's make it happen.
Q, beautiful episode one. We'll see
I'll
you in
catch
the future.
I'll catch you in the future. Take care.